Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This day in sports history. Hey, and welcome to another edition of This Day in Sports History. It's May 29th, and this was a day for threes, and a variety of them. Let's start on this day in 1997 when Utah's John Stockton hit a big one. It was Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals between the Jazz and the Houston Rockets. The Jazz had a 3-2 lead in the series, but there were still a lot of doubters about whether Utah could actually get over the hump. Between the 89 season and the 97 season, no team in the West had won more games than the Jazz, and yet they had not been able to punch their ticket to the NBA Finals. In 96, they'd lost to Seattle in the conference finals. In 94, it was the Rockets. In 92, the Portland Trail Blazers. With 7 minutes to go on this night, the Rockets had a 13-point lead and looked like a decisive Game 7 would be necessary. But the Jazz fought their way back. In the final 3 minutes and 13 seconds of the game, Stockton decided to take over. He scored 13 of his game-high 25 points in that span, including this shot that finally got the proverbial monkey off their back.
Okay, here we go. Russell inbound. Four-man picket fence at the top of the three-point line for the Jazz. 2.8 of a second. We're tied at 100. Game 6 on the line here. Russell to Stockton. Stock for three. Stock got it. Unbelievable. John Stockton. John Stockton. It's over. The Jazz win it. We're on our way to the World Championship.
Utah advanced to the NBA Finals and would play the Chicago Bulls. Of course, that series featured a very memorable game that I will certainly talk about on June 11th. Threes were also raining on this day in 1995 in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Indiana Pacers and the Orlando Magic. And really, this game boiled down to what happened in the final 13.3 seconds. Down 2, Anthony Hardaway found a wide-open Brian Shaw, who buried a three to give the Magic a 1-point lead. Out of a timeout, the Pacers used a good bit of clock before the ball found its way into the hands of Reggie Miller, who hit a three to give the Pacers their 2-point lead back with 5.2 seconds left. Another timeout, and the inbound at half court came into Anthony Hardaway, and he went to work on Haywood Workman, hitting a three with 1.3 seconds left. Magic back up 1. Another timeout to set up this play, and here's NBC's Marv Albert with the call from that day.
McKee will throw in. It's got to be a catch and shoot. Here it is. Smits with the catch and the shot.
In the final 13.3 seconds in this one, there were 11 points scored, and the lead changed hands 4 times. With the win, the Pacers evened the series at 2 games apiece, but it would be the Orlando Magic that moved on to the finals in the series a few days later. Keeping the theme of 3 going, but changing sports to baseball, on this day in 1982, Minnesota pulled off a bizarre triple play. New York Yankee Roy Smalley came up to the plate with no outs in the second inning against the Twins' Terry Felton. Ron Mercer stood on second, and Greg Nettles was on first. Smalley ran the count to 3 balls, 2 strikes, and then swung at a ball out of the strike zone for the first out. Well, Billy Martin had a hit and run on, expecting either a walk or for Smalley to make some contact. When he whiffed, that left Mercer hanging out to dry on his way to third. The throw down beat Mercer by 10 steps, so instead he hung a U-turn and ran back to second. But now standing on second was Nettles. Mercer made it safely back to second, and now Nettles started back to first. Gary Gaetti threw to Kent Hrbek at first, who tagged Nettles for the second out. Mercer then attempted to go back to third, but Hrbek's throw to third beat him with pitcher Terry Felton covering the bag. He tagged Mercer for the third out, and it went down in the scorebook as a strikeout 2-5-3-1 triple play. As Mel Allen would say, how about that? So 3 stories about threes would make a lot of sense, right? But instead, I'm adding another one to this trilogy, this time heading to the golf course and the 2015 Byron Nelson Classic. Rain poured in Texas in the lead-up to the event and rained heavier between the first and second rounds of the tourney. On Friday, tournament officials shorted the 406-yard par 4 14th hole to a 108-yard par 3 because of all the standing water. It played like that for the final 3 rounds. On Thursday, par for 18 holes had been 70, but now with the shortening of the 14th to a par 3, par was 69. It was the first time a PGA Tour event had been played on a course where par was less than 70. And in 1976, it was a brother versus brother battle that resulted in a first. It was the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros at Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium. Phil Niekro took the mound for the Braves. His brother Joe took the mound for the Astros. This was the 5th game in their history that they'd opposed each other in a major league game. Their first meeting in 1967 was just the 2nd brother pair in major league history that had pitched against each other. Well, like most pitchers, Joe did not exactly concentrate on his hitting very much. In 9 seasons, he had a 158 batting average and had just 10 extra base hits and no home runs. That was until today. With 1 out in the 7th and trailing 2-1, Joe stepped in against his older brother and swatted a hanging knuckleball over the left field wall for his first and only home run of his 22-year career. It tied the game at 2, and the Astros went on to win 4-3. So maybe you're asking yourself, had a player ever hit a homer off his brother in the majors before that? And the answer is yes. Back in 1904, Cleveland's George Stovall hit one against his brother Jesse, who was playing with the Detroit Tigers, and Boston Red Sox Rick Farrell homered against his brother Wes of the Cleveland Indians in 1933. It also happened once since, when Bradley Zimmer of the Cleveland Indians took one deep off his brother Kyle of the KC Royals in 2021. And finally, I would certainly be remiss if I did not mention the extraordinary feat that happened on this day in 1953, when Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first humans to ever summit Mount Everest successfully. Time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Fidel Castro was an extra in several Hollywood movies for MGM. In the 1946 release of Easy to Wed, starring Van Johnson and Lucille Ball, he can be seen early in the film as a poolside spectator holding a drink. That's all for today. Thanks for stopping by. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.